if I could start all over in today's world, the world we live in today, would I be a pipeline welder? Would I choose to go be a pipeline welder, or would I choose to start my own business right away? My question to you, if you were to pipeline, if you did want to make a career out of pipeline, because I know there's somebody listening that maybe they want to pipeline their whole career. Maybe they want to join the 798 and get benefits. Maybe they want to travel as a single hand welder, getting benefits, union. Like the longer you go without delegating stuff, the harder it is to delegate, is all I'm saying. I'm literally living through it right now. And it's
That you're always going to be there when that customer wants you. It's not a good game. You either need to be all in or all out.
a lot of these situations where we're in fear. We're in fear of being unaccepted by our peers. We're in fear of not having enough money to feed our family. So we act in fear in a lot of these situations. So
Welcome to the Ross Brothers Podcast, where we help welders grow their business, sharpen their leadership, and build a thriving future.
We're bringing you real-world lessons from our experience in the field and in business so you can avoid the mistakes we made and build a welding business that actually works.
Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your shop to the next level, you're in the right place. So let's get into it.
did you get a haircut?
Uh-uh. No,
Oh, I
no,
know there ain't.
no.
I know there ain't much up there. So
I'm going to give you the Stella look.
yeah, yeah. I got blessed with more hair. I'm still a little bald up here, but Rodney got that inconvenient gene. A little less hair up there. We can.
uh,
You don't have to show us. It's okay. The viewers don't want to see anyway.
yeah. I don't want to wreck anyone's memory of my good looks here.
Yeah,
Smoke
yeah.
and mirrors, man.
How's your day going?
Good, good.
What's
Just
going on at the old mid-state office today?
well, I have one guy sick and another guy at a dentist appointment, and I'm doing some office stuff and getting to
Dang,
chat with you, man.
dang. So you're low on labor today. It sounds like right now.
Yeah, yep.
Well,
Still carving out time for this kind of stuff.
that's good. It's good. Good conversation is good.
Oh, I was just going to ask what's going on in your world today.
Man, I'm just doing a lot of editing. A lot of editing the Playhouse footage. I'm trying to get it wrapped up for this week. There's a lot of footage that, we talked about the Playhouse in last week's video, and I
Yeah.
got a lot of footage I'm working through. I do have an editor now though. You'll be so proud of
Ooh,
me. I think I might have told you
nice.
so. Yeah, I told you I got some
Uh,
stuff to Clark. Did I?
oh, yeah. I just didn't know if what phase you were in with him.
Yeah, so he's done one rough cut and he sent it to me without music or without anything crazy. He just wanted to, you know what I mean? And so I've got him some edits, about 4 or 5 edits that with timestamps, and he's working through it now, and I'm waiting to hear from him. I don't know when he'll get it back to
Cool.
me, but so yeah, I'm happy about that. That is relieving some stress. Like I've said in the past, with this online world that I'm new to, it's been a long time coming to try to delegate some of this stuff. So I'm happy. I'm very that relieves a little stress having that going. And I just know from trying to work with an editor a couple of years ago that I'm gonna have to stick with it. I don't want to, because if I'm not careful, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to stop. But it's kind of like what I've observed you do with Howard. Like you've kept him around this whole time, and you're slowly working with him. Versus like if you were to put him on for a week and then try to work on it, and then you just quit calling him. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to build anything substantial whenever you just quit. Does that make sense?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, you have to give it the time to see what's going to happen, and you got to be optimistic that it's going to work
right,
moving
right,
forward.
totally.
Like saying, okay, if there's, like you can't just throw in the towel, whether it's an employee or not. Well, one, it's taking accountability in yourself as a leader, make sure that you're setting up everything for them to do what they need to do best. Because especially like when you were up here and you pointed out that like our material racks weren't like super organized. So when Howard needed to go do a 15-minute job and it took 30 minutes because he couldn't find the proper stuff, I didn't have the proper setup for him to efficiently go grab a piece of material, X, so on and so forth. And so with an editor, you kind of have to make sure that you have your expectations on, not that I have an editor, but I think it's you can.
I definitely know where you're going with this. Totally. It's like it's important for me to be clear about my expectations and make sure I have as much of my decisions made, because if I know what I want, that's easier to delegate versus like using that analogy. Like if going back to the term you used, taking responsibility, like constantly keeping in your head that like I can do more on my end is the way I interpret that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, you expect your guys to be efficient in the shop, but if you're not doing all you can on your end as an owner to make things more efficient by building racks or yada yada, it's you're going to keep shooting yourself in the foot is the way that's the way I'm interpreting it. I know what you're saying. So like if I
yeah,
can have as much stuff as I can have in order on my end, that's gonna that's gonna play out through my delegation via the editor. And that's one thing that I have, I think, subconsciously knew over all these years or whatever. But it's like more clear to me today. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm feeling a lot of stress is because this delegation has been a long time coming, like I said, and so now that that needs to happen, it's bringing the attention to me. It's bringing to the forefront how much I don't have organized on my end. Does that make sense?
yep, yep,
So my goal, my focus, because of that, I'm now realizing that more, not well, most and more, but more of my time needs to be spent on the front end. In other words, the creating the videos, like producing the videos, the content ideas. Because if I hire a videographer to come film this branch workshop that's coming up, if I as the creator of the business and like the one with the vision, if I can communicate that, I can then break that down and give the videographer a shot list is what Kayla would call it, like, but that's just that gives your help, whoever you hire, direction if you can break it down for them and tell them exactly what you need. But until I get that vision for myself, I can't do that or whatever.
yeah,
So all that to say is it's being brought to the forefront.
yeah.
Business is difficult. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that I'm learning through running a business. Do you have any thoughts on that? I've got a question for you that just come to mind, but any other thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
the only thing I was going to follow up with that is the not only make sure that our parts, that we have everything that we can as business owners on our end ready, but in a situation like you presenting stuff to a uh, uh, an editor, is also being open to any things that are slightly outside of what you're wanting because they may be able to present, like he may be able to edit something and you didn't even think of it or it wasn't really what you're thinking, but you're like, yeah, we could probably work with, be open to ideas. And that's same with me talking to my guys or talking to Howard. I'm like, you know, like, hey, this is what I want. But if you got a way that's faster or, you got something, so on and so forth, be open to hear what they have to say and then try to meet in the middle to get the best result.
This is one of those like life paradoxes or business paradoxes that's what comes to mind whenever you say that is because and I think this is why some self-help stuff can be confusing. Like, I don't know how many of the listeners, you hear somebody say, this is a good book because of this, but then this is a good book because of this, and it's kind of like they're two separate things. Well, that's because both are true, and it's literally that's in my opinion, it's life's way of like saying that you need to figure out you need to make a decision and learn for yourself with your own personal decision. That's the way I interpret that. Because that can be confusing because literally what I just said and what you just said are like two different things, and depending on what we struggle with most, that can depend on how we react in certain situations, those situations. So like, because I totally agree with you. I think it's highly important to give some freedom. In fact, I think I experienced that whenever I was up there. I think I or not experienced that, but I remember having a conversation with you like, because I think I think when you come from in my situation and yours too, you come from being a pipeline welder doing stuff mostly by yourself. I mean, you have a helper, but I mean like, well, again, I'll speak for myself. As a pipeline welder, I work by myself so much as a pipeline welder, and honestly, I've worked a lot by myself outside of pipeline work, just doing mobile welding jobs. And so maybe a lot of it's due to that because I wasn't even great at telling my helper what to do at times because I was so used to working by myself, you know what I mean? So coming from my world of doing stuff by myself, you do that long enough, it's harder to start delegating stuff. So like whenever you do start to delegate, it's hard to let go of that control, I think I would say, which is
Yeah.
what you're saying. You're like, delegate it, but also allow them to have some creativity in it. Because if not, you're constantly there. Hey, do this. Hey, do this. That's literally how I felt when I was messaging Clark, the video editor, yesterday. Actually, I was messaging him and I was like, God, am I being too, what I mean? Like anal about this? Like, am I, like, it's literally how I felt. I was like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's a real struggle with those of us that have worked by ourselves for so long. It's a difficult to start. The longer you go without delegating stuff, the harder it is to delegate, is all I'm saying. I'm literally living through it right now, and it's so annoying. But all I'm saying is I totally agree with what you're saying, Rodney, in the aspect of we have to let our help own. We have to find that balance. We have to let them own what they're doing. We have to give them ownership
Yeah.
over the task. Definitely.
Well, you think about if you, so this is what I do, especially with some of the books that I've listened to and read, about trying to grow into a big company is you think about, I always try to put myself in like, how do these other companies operate? There's a lot of successful businesses. Not that success is one thing or the other. I ain't trying to get into that, but you think about far as systems and how things work, you think of some of these bigger companies to where they have someone doing their job, they have someone else doing their job. I'll use a better analogy. So you think about whenever we were pipelining, what did we do? We welded. That's all we did. We weren't up there surveying. We weren't up there trying to be a superintendent over the whole project. We weren't being a foreman. I mean, as a welder, you could be a welding foreman, but that's all you did. And in order to do the best of your job is you have to be able to have some freedom in the choices like a welding boss on a job. He's got to make some decisions on his own. Now the superintendent's going to have a goal or a direction like, hey, we need you know, we need 2 miles of 12-inch pipe laid today, every day. That's what we need. And so it's up to the well boss to make those changes on the job. Like if a welder isn't performing, a bead hand isn't performing, or other people getting repairs, then it's up to him to make the changes. The superintendent isn't always, now there is times where they will, but generally the welding boss will pull people, move people, and do accordingly. And where I'm going with that is us in our businesses, we have to give them the freedom to do their job and allow them to make decisions on their own. Because if not, like you said, we have to be there every step of the way. And as a running business, you need everyone to act as individual pieces working for the best of the team, best of the company. And so, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Totally, totally. I love the example of pipeline. Uh that's come to my mind and I've brought it up in videos in the past. I've probably even mentioned it to you, and I love that example because, and I'm thankful for, the 8 years roughly that I pipeline welded, and I was able to see the contrast of being a pipeline welder and running my own business because there's a reason why we feel less stressed whenever we go on a pipeline and we're just responsible for the weld. There's a reason for that versus the seat you and I are in right now, which is well, there's so much to do because there's still so much more delegating to do to make the business run more smooth. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's delegation is key, man. I could talk delegation all day long. Speaking of stress of business, if you could start all over today, this is a common question I get from viewers that I've got from viewers over the years. Usually high school kids could be any age, but it's usually a high school kid wondering what to do with his life. And that is, if I could start all over in today's world, the world we live in today, would I be a pipeline welder? Would I choose to go be a pipeline welder, or would I choose to start my own business right away? And so I want to hear what your thoughts are. If you could start all over today, would you like literally picture yourself in today's world, kind of like in Howard's shoes, maybe? Like if you could start all over in
Yeah.
today's world, knowing what you know now, would you start as a pipeline welder or as a business owner? Just start your own business.
Hmm. Well, with what I know now and looking back and I look at my experience, I probably I think so because I'm with you. I've had some young kids reach out about being in high school and like had about starting a business or whatever. Usually it's more any tips on starting your welding business coming out of high school. But if I was to go back, because I look back and I think about how much actual experience I had, and even going into the pipe world, um, I think I would still go the pipeline route. But with what I know now, I would go into it with a plan of starting a business, like because there's more money. Because whenever you're young and you're traveling, you're gaining experience because there's a lot of jobs. But I would go into a job looking at it as from a superintendent's mindset. I would go into it trying to learn everything about the job, not just the welding. Now, granted, you need to learn to weld and learn to do that good, and then start trying to figure out the rest of it. And if you spend your money wisely, have a budget, a lot of things that I didn't have because with what I know about business, it takes a lot of money to start a business. It takes a lot of money to keep a business going. And so if you can get experience, I would have gone back and I would have looked at every job a little differently. I would have been, because I got into the mentality like I was a really good hot pass guy. I was like, I knew I could go to any job and I could be a hot pass hand. But that was the extent of it. I didn't try to think, it wasn't until 10 years into it that I started thinking a little bit different. So yeah, no, I would still go pipeline, but I would go into it with a different mentality that I'm going to gain all this experience. You may not be able to start business right away, but you could be better funded. You can make a good plan, and that by the time you get started, you could have all your marketing. You could have now, granted, you would need a launch. Say in 5 years I'm launching, etc. Whatever. You don't want to do it halfway because that's what I've seen. A lot of guys, they'll, pipeline and you come home, you work a side job, then you go back out. There's no credibility in that you're always going to be there when that customer wants you. So if you're trying to tip the scale or however you'd word it, if you're trying to ride the fence, it's not a good game. You either need to be all in or all out until you're ready. And there's things you can do along the way to build things up. But anyways, yeah. So with what I know, if you have a passion about something, I would get the experience about it because if you have the experience, and yeah, yeah, totally.
That's definitely something I've mulled over a lot myself. That my mind, for one, I could go three different directions. We could, you know what I mean, break down a lot of what you just said, but the thing that's sticking with me the most is going into pipeline with a plan. Using pipeline as a stepping stone is what I'm mostly taking from that because I've thought about it time and time again, and I've studied guys over the years, guys that we've worked with. We both know guys that we've worked with that now have their own businesses. They pipeline for a while. There's several people that that have done that using pipeline as a stepping stone. But to do that, you have to have a vision for you have to have a vision of a of business that you actually want to own. For me, whenever I was pipelining, I honestly got to the point where I was like, I could pipeline forever and I'd be okay. Essentially, like I had too much, I didn't have a, I didn't have a solid enough vision, I think I would say. So like it allowed me to, yeah, I didn't have solid enough. And as I'm saying that out loud, I kind of did, but it could have been more solid because I've literally been home running my own business for 5 years. So obviously I had some type of vision that I wanted to, the one thing that was clear to me is I wanted to have some type of financial freedom. So I knew that like, but anyway, but I know I could do things different with my pipeline money, and a lot of those things being what you said, which is having a plan. And you didn't ask me, Rodney, but if you were to ask me that same question,
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
would
yeah,
say is,
yeah.
but no, it's okay. But
Oh,
if I got asked that same question, what I would say is a lot of what you said, which is I would, for one, go into pipeline and thinking of it as more of a temporary thing, going into it with all this money I'm going to make, I'm going to invest into something bigger. So yeah, I would definitely do that because at some point we have to decide that we want to get serious about the business, because the one thing that's coming to mind for me right now is like, well, what about the 18-year-old that doesn't know exactly that solid vision like what I've just like what do you not know? So it's like it's kind of like so I guess what I would do differently is I would maybe learn more about money management. I think if I could start all over and pipeline, I'm totally off track now. Now I'm
oh
back on
no.
track because the question was, would I pipeline or run my own business? I would run my own business, or I would pipeline definitely because of the experience, like you said, Rodney. But I would also focus more on money management and investing my money. Because to me,
Hmm.
especially in today's world, you make all that good money coming from where you and I came from, which was very little. We had what we needed, but very little. You know what I mean? Not knowing any idea of how to manage $4,000 a week. You know what I mean? No idea. Like, and so I would study how to manage my money, and I would invest every paycheck that I got off of Pipeline. I would invest a certain percent into a savings account, a certain percent into a investment account, and a certain percentage into a charity account. That's literally what I would do different if I could start all over. And so that's what I would learn. I would learn different money management because at the end of the day, if you don't have your vision clear, at least you've got money in these buckets for whenever you do kind of decide, oh, hey, I do enjoy running a skid steer. I do want to have, you know, a dirt working business, not just a pipeline business. Or maybe I do want to start my own pipeline business, but you know what I mean? But if you're pipelining the whole time and you're not delegating your money appropriately, you're going to constantly find yourself looking for the next job versus, you know what I mean, being able to chase your own dream at some point. So,
Oh yeah. Well, and now that you say it, the one thing, my one goal while I was pipelining, the one thing that I always said, you know, like my goal was I want to be debt free and I want to buy property and basically if I got to, I can go work $10 an hour job and be okay. Like because I also knew that like it wasn't going to be a long time deal, like forever deal. But as I say that, while I got into it, that's all I knew. And before Stella, like we've talked, I thought I was going to retire pipelining, you know. And so that's another thing is like, if you want to be a pipeline welder for, forever, by all means, like, don't let that hold you up. But it's also knowing that because there's so many guys that I worked with that there's only a handful that are like still pipelining. There's a handful that do. And unfortunately, the one thing, whenever Austin, when you said that about managing money, like, man, like staying away from drinking and going out to the bars and doing all the things that pipeline, like, unfortunately entails. There's for a young guy or gal coming out of high school and they're wanting to do that, there's things to watch out for when it comes to if you do have a vision whether it's a business or a career of some sort, you know, like there's some of those things that is real enticing because of the society that you're around, the people that you're working with. You can hang out with the wrong crowd is all I'm getting at.
Sure.
You know, that's all, like, just as a warning, because it's real easy to hang out with the wrong, and not that any of those guys or gals were ever bad. It's just they have different priorities. And if you're focused on the dream, if you have a vision or a dream or something, you don't want to get sucked up into the nightlife, I guess you could say.
For sure. I mean, I would say that whole concept of the five people you spend the most time with is you're going to become a product of the five people you spend the most time with. That's definitely valid in the pipeline world. And yes, it is very common for pipeline welders, anybody that travels for a living, it's common for people to be lonely and go to the bars and drink and like that is common. I will say I I was able to meet people that didn't do that. So just know that it's out there and that's a whole nother leg in itself. My question to you, Rodney, that I just thought of is if you were to pipeline, if you did want to make a career out of pipeline, because I know there's somebody listening that maybe they want to pipeline their whole career. Maybe they want to join the 798 and get benefits. Maybe they want to travel as a single hand welder, getting benefits, union like benefits and do a whole career like that. I mean, you could do that for 20 years and get a heck of a pension, and maybe that's their goal. What would you say to somebody that's wanting to be a pipeline welder until they're 60 years old? What what kind of things, versus our mindset of wanting to have our own business? I want to be a pipeline welder.
Yeah.
What would you kind of like if you were to do that? What would you, because of the
I
inconsistency is where I'm going with this. It's very inconsistent.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's good for that to be your focus, but also like I know what are your thoughts? What would you suggest to somebody?
So, not to get union or non-union side of things, because I was in the 798 for 2 years, and then I had a chance to go back, and then I turned it down. But if you play your cards right, this is a topic in itself. If you wanted to pipeline for a career, um, I'll just keep it neutral far as that goes. Like, if there is a big enough company and that you get in with, you know, go at it as you want to move up the chain up into superintendent, because generally, Austin, you've seen, like, you start off welding at the bottom, work your way up to being a foreman, learn the ropes there, and then eventually, if you're in good enough with a company, like a well-known company, let's go that route, um, then it could turn into being a superintendent. Those jobs to where you're leading, a whole spread. Because I worked with some guys. There was a guy that I worked with. He was a spacing hand. He was the pipe foreman, front end foreman, and now he's, as far as I know, he's still a superintendent for it. And so essentially, if you were to do it, go that route, but also know that some of these big there was a company I worked for that's no longer, because like Wilbrose used to be, and then, because I worked for Joe Max and for many years. And so that's, I guess, essentially Wilbrose is no longer, and they were huge, but they got bought out. And actually, the original owners of Joe Max bought Wilbrose, and then they made it WB. Anyways, all I'm getting at with that is that if you plan on trying to go long term, go in it trying to get as much experience on every level. Because if you just want to be a welder, you're just going to be a welding boss. And if that's all you want to do, that's fine. But if you want to go for the long haul, or you could be like someone that we know and be a welding superintendent over several other places. But anyways,
Um,
Uh,
uh,
so
one of my questions that come to mind was like, how does somebody focus on climbing the ladder? Because that's how I'm interpreting what you're saying is climbing the ladder, or because interpretation is a big deal, is why I'm trying to clear this up. Somebody listening might be interpreting that as climbing the ladder. Somebody might be interpreting that as uh, I need to go into pipeline and thinking about how I can make myself more valuable. You know, or so like how do you what are your I just know that in certain industries like the oil field, sometimes if you've got in your head that you want to be a superintendent and you're bound and determined to do that, sometimes because of the politics, because of the vibe, if we're not in control of our own emotions, sometimes we can get in there and think that that's the only route. And so I'm just wondering what you would say to somebody that like that feels that like or maybe I should ask this. Maybe I should ask if somebody listening starts pipelining, maybe they're pipelining right now, and they're trying to climb the ladder and they're in a situation where, they feel that they're going to have to do something that's not up to par with their morals or whatever. Like maybe they like what would you say to somebody like if you know that's the route, you're being told right now on the Ross Brothers podcast that like, you know what I mean, climb the ladder, become a superintendent, you know, but you're on a job and this job's really important. You got a family. There's a lot on the line, right? I mean, so you're trying to make this happen, but there's somebody or a situation standing in your way, usually somebody in your perspective, it feels like somebody standing in the way of me getting to that next step. What would you say to that person in that moment? Like, you know what I mean? Because they don't want to be a bad person. They don't want to step on anybody or, you know what I mean, to get to where they want to go. But it's like there's a lot riding on the line. I don't want to lay off right now. My
yeah,
family needs this. You know what I mean? Like what would you say to somebody in that situation?
I think depending on the situation, particularly just because I've been in a situation before to where essentially the odds were against me. I was trying to uh, take the leadership role at, like as serious and try to take it far. But I think in that situation, I guess for me, because I think about that situation whenever you're trying to be something, and if something doesn't match your moral codes, you need to stand by it, but also know that with the experience that you get up to a point, it's just like an application or a resume. At this point, like for me, I was a welding boss on a job, and things are turning south. Won't go into that, but the situation was I thought of from that point on, I can talk to any other superintendent with the experience of, hey, I've been a welding boss on this job, or like you can use it as credentials. So if you feel in your gut that you need to drag up and leave that job, obviously don't do it on a whim because that's usually not super smart. Like make some phone calls because any welder, any pipeline welder out there, you make some phone calls before you go to drag up because things may turn south on you. But yes, I go with your gut, but also know that you also got to look at the big picture that, if it's a big company and you have that there's other superintendents that you can work for, that's where, depending on the moral situation, sometimes it might be worth just biting your tongue and get through, you know, put up with the crap for a bit and then, moving forward. So I don't have a solid answer, but you have to evaluate your personal situation and evaluate your long-term vision and see if you were to quit or drag up in that moment, how would that affect your bigger goal? And so it's you kind of have to just weigh it out. I don't
So,
know if that
so
really answers it.
well, I mean, it helps because I've always been an advocate of weighing every situation as its own. So, like, I understand that aspect of it. How big a part? Because to me, like whenever I ask myself that question, like if I'm trying to climb the ladder for this pipeline company, and at some point I've been making this good money for 6 months, a year even, and I'm trying to get to that next level. I've got a family, 3 kids that's got this lifestyle of making X amount of money per week, and all of a sudden I'm fixing to get demoted or whatever, you know what I mean? Like something's fixed, something's going hairy. That's like, and I just know that being out there in the real world, it's easy for us to do stuff that we don't in our heart, we don't truly want to do, but we do it because we're scared. We're scared that we're gonna lose this lifestyle. We're scared that we're not gonna be able to feed our family. We're scared that a lot of it's usually, maybe a lifestyle or whatever, but it's like, because that's a hard situation to be in. You work so hard to get to a certain level and something happens. That's like, so for me, whenever I think about being in that situation, I think about how important like having faith in the process is. You know what I mean? Like having faith that like if I lose this job, like there's something better for me, and knowing that what I've built up until this point, in other words, my skill set, my reputation, is going to open other doors for me. You know what I mean? So that's what I think about is like just kind of like letting that's the route I would take. And so I was just curious what your thoughts were as far as like, yeah, yeah, no, I mean that's all that's very important. Like
Yeah,
you got to know, you got to weigh the situation because every situation is slightly different. So that's a very good point. That's a
yeah,
very good point. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
'cause-
I mean, ultimately, I mean, because I was on jobs where like the whole like like the whole job shut down, all the welders, because there was a raise that supposedly wasn't going to be given. And then so everyone shut it down, like all the way from the start, from the front to the back. We all met at the yard and had a big old powwow over it. And in that moment, one of these older fellas that I was working with, you know, heard that he had been in jail before. And so, like these old timers like from the 80s and 90s, like you didn't want to, like anyways, kind of getting to pipeline stories, but talking about like standing in that moment, like, do you drag up with everyone to prove a point, or do you kind of step back and be like, no, and then be afraid of looking like a coward, So because that situation right there is a real thing, and it's probably still a thing to this day, because we come, yeah. So like, there's definitely times when you have to evaluate, like, do you go with the crowd or do you go off of what your personal situation is? Because unfortunately, the the mankind is so easily to be influenced because of a group or a crowd.
because we want to
And
be, because we want to be accepted. That's part of our human nature, like you're saying. Like yeah, we want to be accepted. That's a huge part of our survival, to be honest. You know what I mean? Is feeling accepted. So yeah, it's tough. I would, if I could go back, I would. If I could go back, I mean, I stood my ground a lot as far as like, like feeling like I wanted to drag up and just doing that no matter what happened. But there was also so many times where I just went with the crowd because I wanted to be accepted. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, which kind of brings me back around to like what I would do if I could do it all over again, which is focus on money management. Because at the end of the day, if you're managing your money, you're going to feel way more confident to go with those inner values or whatever that, you and your family like like I don't want to uh I don't want to be unaccepted by my peers right now by leaving or by making a certain decision that might cost me my job. I don't want to do that because that's going to make me feel unaccepted by my peers. But if my finances were in order, you know what I mean? It's like that's one variable that's, you know what I mean, that you're not fearing. You know what I mean? Because we in all these
because
situations we're
you're not
fearing
a
a lot.
slave.
Yeah, because we're a lot of these situations we're in fear. We're in fear of being unaccepted by our peers. We're in fear of not having enough money to feed our family. Like, so we act in fear in a lot of these situations. So that one variable alone, another variable that I could get into is, learning about yourself and knowing yourself well enough and feeling confidence in yourself, it, no matter what, that way you're not worried about that feeling accepted by others, like having faith that you'll be accepted by another group. You know what I mean? Like this isn't the only group out there. You know what I mean? So if your finances are in order and you feel confident in yourself, all of a sudden, what's there to fear? You know what I mean? Like because there's
Yeah.
more on the other side of this bad situation. There's beautiful opportunity on the other side of this, you know what I mean, seemingly unfortunate situation. But you got to have those things,
Yeah.
and a lot of us didn't at a certain age. You know what I mean? So I just think these are good things to ponder upon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because especially when you're trying to, especially when you oh man, yeah. I yes. Well, I started thinking about all the different times, because there was times. I mean, heck, there was that job that you and I were on in West Virginia for that EMATs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember.
Oh man, that was a horrible job. Sometimes you have to drag up no matter what. Um,
Why did we drag up? Did we? Why did we? Oh, we had a better job to go to on that one, didn't we? I think.
yeah, yeah. Oh man,
Where were we headed? Where did we go? Why did we drag up? What
did
job were we headed
we?
to? Was it MG Dice or where was it?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Yeah, because I think essentially it was waiting on MG Dice to open back up for the next project or something.
That was one of
But
them. That was one of them get by jobs. Come on.
well, so like that job that you got me on with MG Dice, and with like because and you know how it goes because for me through the years that I pipelined, if you didn't have a job lined up at Thanksgiving, you're probably not going to get something until about February, March, depending on the situation in the year. But like that year, I went into fear mode because, like with that job that we were on, it was a good job, but it looked like it was possibly going to be ending like in a month. And I think because I was
Which
just on the
which
firing
job?
line, I wasn't
Oh, MG
the
Dice, the MG
that
Dice
job
job.
where yeah, 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 because it was the 12-inch. Geez, was that the 500 wall? I don't know. It was 12-inch. It was that 12-inch job, and then they had that other job that was like a 24-20, like all super heavy wall. But that one, I can't remember which scenario, but it was one of those deals. It was getting towards that Thanksgiving. Oh yeah, it was Thanksgiving because we all had Thanksgiving at the campground and at their little community shack or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, um, but talking about dragging up and trying to make those decisions, and now it wasn't like in a morals, but it was as a pipeliner, you start going into survival mode. And for me, a friend of mine had called and was like, "Hey, there's this 30-inch pipeline going in Chickasha, Oklahoma, and that was an hour from where we grew up or live or whatever." And so I was like, and it was like 130 miles. And so my brain goes, well, this is a no brainer. This will carry me into like probably April or May. And so that's where I was evaluating the situation. And that's when Brooke, first started tagging along. And we left West Virginia, went all the way there, took the test, and then I busted it. And then I had to make a bunch of phone calls and end up back in the same campground that you were in 4 days later. But I didn't have the balls to ask uh what was his name? The weld boss. Uh,
Brent or Jonathan.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
which one
yeah,
it was.
yeah.
Which one? Which one was it?
Brent.
Was it Brent?
It was
Was it
Brent.
Brent? Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
would
but
have.
I was
He probably would have taken you back. Brent's a good dude, but
man, but my pride was like, man, I drug up on him. There's no way I'm calling him back because of my stupidity, or I
well,
felt like my stupidity. But
that's the
and then
pipeline. That's the pipeline lifestyle, man. That's literally
yeah,
what you sign up for whenever you join the pipeline. Like seriously, like you got to make decisions like that. You got me that just
yeah,
sticks with a good company. Like I went the loyal route only because I enjoyed working with certain people and I didn't care how long I was off. You know what I mean? But if you go the more business route, you got to think like you do. In my opinion, you have to. And I know several guys that done that. You know what I mean? And I even made there was a couple times where I made that decision when I was working for companies that that I wasn't loyal to, you know what I mean? But like it's literally a decision you got to make. You don't know what the future holds. You can easily bust a test. Like that is literally the prime example of the reality of the pipeline life whenever you're trying to make it work long term. I mean, you're literally living one job to
hustling.
the next. Yeah. I mean,
Now,
how it goes.
something that you just said that I didn't really think about it, is certain companies, you become loyal to, and that affects how you determine whether you quit or not. Because like for Joe Maxon, which I know they got a lot of heat all the time about, they didn't always pay the greatest, but they always had work. They always had work. And so for me, I was like, well, they've never done me wrong. So that's how I evaluated my situation. And that was, you know, that they always treated me right. They knew what I could do. And anytime I called, generally, one of the well bosses would bring me on and stuff like that. But whenever it come to companies that, you know, if they didn't value you or if you didn't feel valued at that company, so why would you stay?
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
But I think the loyalty part is probably a key. Like you become loyal. It's well, anyways, you you want to be loyal, but you don't want to be the like one of those cats that like as soon as the well boss shows up and then there's like flies on a cow show up,
Right.
Oh,
There's
anyways.
a
Oh,
there's a way to there's a way to be loyal and a good hand that's not there's a way to do it. You know what I mean? I
yeah.
mean there is. You know what I mean? A
My
lot
mm,
some people just didn't know any other way. You know what I mean? Like you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like but
Oh yeah.
there is a way. It takes a lot of faith whenever you're just starting because if
Mm,
you're trying to be loyal when you're just starting and you're wanting to get in with somebody, like it takes you gotta that goes back to that what I talked about like feeling confident in yourself. These
oh yeah.
primary these primary needs that we need as humans, like if you feel confident in yourself and what you've built, you're gonna be able like those decisions are way easier. Does that make sense? Versus the people that
Mm,
are like what you're talking about that were like, you know what I mean, well boss shows up, hey, I'm gonna go butter up to him. In my opinion, they didn't have much confidence in themselves. You know what I mean? Because if they did, they wouldn't do that. You know what I mean?
right.
Most
Oh
likely,
yeah.
again, situation dependent, but
Right. Whether you're good buddies with them or not, maybe a difference way. But yeah, I mean, like I always tried that if I can go to a job and I can get minimal repairs and I do my job and I don't complain, because after being a weld boss, for anyone that is new, do not go complain to the weld boss every 5 minutes. Oh, the hot pass hands are undercutting the crap out of that bevel. Or being a hot pass hand, man, that bead hand is leaving windows all the way down. So many windows you could have 10 welding rods sticking out. Anyways, that's kind of some of the stuff you just kind of have to like toughen up and just, you know, make happen. Probably the biggest complaints whenever you're on the firing line and hot pass or the hot fill guys, they just barely put anything in there. And you're like, and, the front end always likes to put the firing line in the hole.
one of the for sure, yeah, one of the biggest things that I think that benefited me as a pipeline welder was taking situations like that where, bead hand would leave windows or, you know, hot fill hands wouldn't put enough in the pipe. One of the biggest things I believe that benefited me as a pipeline welder was taking those situations and figuring out again, like looking at those situations like, okay, how can I look at this and become a better welder? Or how can I use this situation to make me a better welder? You know what I mean? Versus complaining
Oh
to
yeah.
people. Now I'm sure again this is situation dependent. I'm sure there's times where it would be helpful for that well boss to know if you know what I mean. If somebody's not, I've never been a well boss, but I can just imagine it would be helpful to know if somebody's not pulling their weight. You know what I mean? Like if somebody,
Yeah.
or I say pulling their weight, if somebody's not maybe not pulling their weight, but in some situations maybe, but if they're literally doing work that's, you know what I mean, under par, like, okay,
Yeah.
I probably want to know about that. You know what I mean? Because as a web boss, you can move people
Well,
around.
yes. Yes. There definitely is a, you know, like you said, like situational because the times that whenever we were either on the fire line and if, let's say it's just 250 wall, and if that hot pass hand is putting in a bead and it's humped up and it's leaving deep wagon tracks, like now, granted, there's a couple ways you go about it. You can go talk to the guy directly and say, "Hey, man, if you mind, you might want to crank it up, or just have a small chit chat." But you also don't want to be the guy like constantly like, "Hey, man, your stuff is, you know, like you gotta find that balance of whenever you go conversate with them. If it's bad and they're like trying to screw you over, that's a different conversation. That's where you just weld over it cold and try to put it on him, So
Well,
anyway,
that that kind of brings us back around to where we started, which is uh, delegating as a web boss. You're essentially you're delegating, but you're not. I mean, you are. You know what I mean? So all that to say is like you don't want to be too as a web boss. You don't want to be too overbearing with your help. You want to let them welders, especially pipeline welders. You know what I mean? Like we we have this, a lot of us have this stubborn attitude, like we're gonna weld, and you're not gonna tell me how to weld. You know what I mean? So, um, uh, I don't know how the 18-year-olds are today. They might be different, but some of
uh,
us that kind of got some of that old school edge. You know what I mean? We're a little stubborn. So anyway, um, so yeah, you don't want to be too overbearing. Like you said, it's a balance for sure. Yeah, you don't want to be too overbearing, but if it's bad enough, you want to, you know what I mean? You got to do your job as a well boss and make, you know what I mean? You got to make a change or else that reflects on you, obviously, and ultimately the company overall, you know? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, welding business or pipeline. To sum it up, we would pipeline again for the experience. For me, I would pipeline again because of the experience. I think if you're 18 right now, you're listening to this podcast and you're 18 years old, 16, whatever, you want to be a pipeline welder, even if you're not that age, but you want to be a pipeline welder, my ultimate recommendation is books and money management. Learning about money management. That's for this podcast. I got more, but you know, because that self-confidence is huge too, but definitely money management is what I would suggest you focus on. Any word, Mr.
I
Eli?
I I would double down on that one for this one because if you got your finances in order from a young age, then you're not held back by anything, so it opens the doors. So yeah, no, I'm with you because I look back whenever I was pipelining and before I kind of got a little bit of an idea on what saving looked like, I look back and I'm like, man, you were making 3 grand a week and, wasn't quite check to check, but, if you were off work a month, you were pinching pennies, because especially in 2009, whenever the whole world shut down and I was only 2 years into it. I mean, I didn't even have time to even figure it out per se. A guy should have. Well, anyways, but yeah, money management for anyone thinking about it. So, ditto.
Do you have any Do you have any books? I got a book in mind. Do you have any books in mind that a guy could listen to
Uh,
about money
if
management?
I would say the one that we've been reading, Profit First.
Mm, yeah, that's a good one. Profit First, and maybe one to even read before that. I don't know if it matters, but is Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh yeah,
I would highly
yeah.
recommend because depending on your money mindset right now, you may not have that. You may not even know some of the things because that's how I felt whenever I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was nuts. I was like, there's a whole nother world out there that's available to us. You just got to know these things. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah,
The red pill or the blue pill?
yeah, yeah. I need to watch that movie. I haven't. I know a lot about it because of a certain podcaster I listen to, but I know the gist of it. But I need to like watch it again for fun. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, totally.
well, I think that's gonna be a good conversation, man. You got any last words for the viewers?
Uh, just whatever it is that you want to do, just try to be intentional. Be intentional and be open-minded with what it looks like, not based off of the social status.
Right on, man. Right on. What do you want to talk
What
about
about
next
you?
week? Oh, last
Oh,
words.
yeah.
Last words is besides the money thing, man. You know, running your own business or pipeline, using pipeline as a stepping stone, kind of going into it, looking at it like that. If well, either way, if you want to start your own business, I would highly recommend utilizing pipeline as a stepping stone because it is good money, or it can be if you practice money management. Definitely a good stepping stone, but ultimately, if you study money management and you learn about yourself and try to be as confident in yourself as possible, uh, you can do anything you want in this world, not just pipeline. You can make whatever happen. You know what I mean? If you just study those fundamental things, you can have any job and manage your money good and still be better off than I am today, or you know what I mean? Somebody that's made good money their whole life, you know what I mean? Like, uh, yeah. So kind of just reiterating really is what I would say. So, and try to have fun. Try to have fun. That's one personal thing I'm trying to do more lately is trying to have more fun in my life, incorporating fun and off time, being intentional about taking off work for a couple days, if not at least one solid day a week. But if not, you know what I mean? Have fun and take care of yourself. So, yeah.
Love it.
All right. Well, let us know down in the comments if you have any questions about this conversation, and we will catch you all next episode here in a couple of weeks. Thanks for watching. Learn something every day.
There's always a way.
There we go. That's what I like for you to say is there's always a way.
Always a way.
There's always a way.